Buster Olney thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings with Armin and Levac on 104.5 The Team every Thursday at 5:15. The best of Buster at 6:30. Buster, should CC Sabathia be in the bullpen?
I don't think he should be because I think they have to ride out his performance. I mean, if there was no money attached, let's face it, he would not, and this wouldn't even be discussed. He would not be in the rotation. But there is money attached, and that's the reality they're dealing with. And they also have to worry about the innings limits for Adam Warren, for Michael Pineda as he comes back. And they knew at some point they were going to have to start to pull the reins on those guys a little bit. So I think that fact makes this decision easier on what to do with CC. But, hey, if the contract wasn't an issue, then he would be in the bullpen and the Yankees would be free and clear. They're going to have to ride it out to see if they can get something out of him going forward.
This seems to be the second year in a row where the Yankees are driven by a veteran. Last year it was Derek Jeter. This year CC Sabathia, where they have to make decisions that might not be the best X's and O's, so to speak, but there are other factors involved that's dictating these decisions for the Yankees.
It is to a degree, and I don't think this is quite the same. I thought last year they were deferring to Derek's stature. In this situation, the bottom line, and it was the same as what we talked about at the beginning of spring training with Alex Rodriguez, when you owe a player this much money, and you're talking about a guy making $25 million this year, $25 million next year, and unless he has a shoulder injury, he's got a vesting option for another $25 million in 2017, and so you have to figure out a way to keep that guy as a productive member. And I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I do think that when you watch him pitch, look, he's not good. He's got an ERA at 5.5, but it's not like he's given up 8 runs in 5 innings. Non-competitive. I do think that Joe Girardi needs to make an adjustment with how he's using him. He has to start looking for that exit ramp when they get through 15 to 18 hitters in games. Because time and again we've seen Joe leave him in the game a third time through the order, and CC gets hit around. And when you look at his statistics, it's pretty clear that the longer you go on in a game, from 0 to 15 pitches, 16 to 30, 31 to 45, his performance goes down. And Girardi has to acknowledge that reality with how he makes decisions.
Now, speaking of the Yankees and the elderly players, Beltran goes down. They're not sure how long he's out for. The fan base is crying out for Aaron Judge to step up. Not sure when that's going to happen, but have you had any experience with him? And what's your take on the young outfielder Aaron Judge?
I saw him in spring training, and man, is he impressive. I mean, physically, there's no doubt about it. He reminds you of Giancarlo Stanton because he just he has that stature. And his swing is actually really similar to Stanton, where it looks like he's just going to overwhelm the baseball. And you feel good about the chances that down the road he's going to help the Yankees. I think one of the issues that the Yankees probably are going to be kicking around about Aaron Judge is, and they worry about service time stuff less than other teams do, but do you put him in the big leagues knowing that Jacoby Ellsbury's return is probably right around the corner?
Yeah.
Or do you just kind of bring up a utility guy, make do without necessarily another outfielder, or call up a different outfielder and just wait for Judge to develop more. I know this, that a lot of times when you get big players like that, they have a difficult time initially in the big leagues. They strike out a lot. You guys saw it with Joey Gallo with the Rangers where, he hit some monstrous home runs, but opposing pitchers really found weaknesses in his swing right away. And I'm sure that that's part of the conversation the Yankees would be having if they thought about calling him up.
Buster Olney thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings with Armin and Levac on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio.
Buster, you wrote about an idea that you had where the Yankees might have some arms the Cubs should be looking at.
I did. It's interesting. And a lot of it depends on sort of how they view Adam Warren and how they view Nathan Eovaldi and how they view Luis Severino, who's one of the top prospects. If the Yankees feel like they have starting pitching depth enough where they would feel comfortable in moving either Eovaldi or Warren, you know what? The Cubs are out there right now looking for starting pitching, and they're looking for young, controllable starters. And this is theoretical on my part, but if the Yankees are, looking for a particular position player or help at a particular position, the Cubs are uniquely in a position to help them with that. And theoretically, it could be a good match. But the first question is whether or not the Yankees are comfortable with the starting pitching depth. And my guess is right now they're not so comfortable with it because they know about Pineda's injury history. They know about the ticking time bomb and Masahiro Tanaka's elbow. And at some point, if CeCe's performance does become just god-awful, they're going to have to take him out of the rotation.
Buster, is there really going to be an all-star game where no Yankees players are voted in by the fans?
Yeah, looks like it, right? We'll see if Alex Rodriguez, at some point dents at DH. But this has happened before, early 90s. And, of course, during the Horace Clarke years, I don't think there were Yankees starting in those years either. And you know what? I mean, they don't necessarily. I think Brett Gardner, you could make a case for him being on the All-Star team, but that's a late push. And if they, start a Lorenzo Cain or an Alex Gordon or a Mike Trout, I certainly don't think you have a major issue with it.
Buster, when you look at the performance of Mets rookie Steven Matz, what does it bring to your mind?
It actually brings to mind those Mets teams in the late 60s and early 70s when you had, Tom Seaver backed up by two left-handers, Jerry Koosman and John Matlack. And he absolutely looks like he could be that type of guy. And, of course, I, like everybody else, just love the whole thing with him coming up without the batting gloves and looking like he could rake. In fact, I was looking for those situations in recent games when the Cubs just completely shut down the Mets, where Terry Collins would be looking for opportunities to put him into the game as a pinch hitter, because not only did he get hits, but he looked like a guy who should get hits. With his athleticism, and you have to be really excited about it. But I do think the Mets ought to be out there aggressively talking with other teams about offensive players and be willing to listen to the idea that they would give up one of these four great young starters.
You think they're going to be able to pull that off, Buster? Will the Mets be able to pull off a trade?
I don't think they will.
Oh.
I feel like I'm only talking about theory in that regard, because the Mets, as far as we know, they're still in their bunker. They're still not willing to take on money. And I think they're so conservative, I don't think they would even talk to other teams about trading one of these young starters. And you can understand that part. The part that I don't get is where they're not willing to look for opportunities to take on a veteran player who's making more salary. And again, I'm just ripping here, an Andre Ethier of the Dodgers. Or, and I'm not talking about taking on all their salary. I'm just talking about taking on enough where you can acquire the player. They're not doing that. And, there was a scout who I spoke to who said when you watch the Mets play, it feels like too many of their guys should actually be in the minor leagues as opposed to the big leagues. And I loved, well, not loved, that's the wrong word, but I was laughing at how Keith Hernandez, if you guys watched the broadcast on Wednesday, it was almost like he was talking to himself because he was so disgusted by the ineptitude of the offense.
Buster Olney thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings with Armin and Levac, 104.5 The Team. Buster, are the Mets even a playoff team if they can't add a bat?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand. And why they haven't been aggressive is that when you look at the offense and you look at some of the other trends in the league and where teams are going, they're going to need another hitter, because the idea of David Wright is this, big-time force cavalry coming back to help this lineup. That's ludicrous if they're actually planning and thinking that way, because we have no idea how long David Wright will stay healthy, if he'll stay healthy, if he'll even be able to help them. And you got Michael Kadire, in his late 30s now, taking shots in his knee to get out on the field. Go get somebody. Because if you're actually in the conversation the way the Mets are right now, and you can run out starting pitch 10, you're in the mix. But they clearly need some offensive upgrade, and you could hear it in Terry Collins' voice in explaining why they tried the suicide squeeze on Wednesday night. They're desperate. And what would be the most ridiculous thing would be if in a month the front office fired Terry Collins and said, well, we just don't have that much energy. No, because you're not hitting. Go get a bat.
Buster, one of the more entertaining stories recently in baseball, Mike Scioscia just come out and said that he had no power struggle with former GM of the Angels, Jerry Dipoto. What do you know about this? What is going on with all this?
Well, and with all due respect to Mike Scioscia, who's going to go into the Hall of Fame someday as a manager, that's like from the movie Casablanca when they're shocked that there's gambling in this establishment, okay? I mean, come on. Everyone's known about the power struggle. Jerry Dipoto went to Artie Moreno, the owner, 2 years ago and asked him to deal with the issues that Jerry and Mike were having. And, as Mike... if he's describing a power struggle as going up and throwing Jerry Dipoto to the ground and sitting on top of him, well then, yeah, I guess there wasn't a power struggle. But if the power struggle is sitting in the team meeting, as he did on Sunday, and when Albert Pujols stands up and challenges the general manager in a meeting, and Scioscia doesn't say anything about it, as the person in the chain of command and doesn't back Jerry Dipoto, yeah, that's a power struggle. And if Mike Scioscia in the last 48 hours doesn't run up to the front office and say, look, I hear that Jerry's really unhappy. We're in the middle of a pennant race. We got 29 days to go. Jerry's made excellent in-season trades. We need him on board. If you don't do that, that's part of a power struggle. And when I've heard that some people have characterized this as a, struggle between new school and old school analytics. I don't buy that. I think, that's only a flashpoint of what happened last weekend. This is a good old-fashioned George Steinbrenner, Billy Martin, unnamed GM having an issue. And in the end, I think Jerry Dipoto, who I thought did a great job with the Angels, decided that he just couldn't do his job the way he felt like he needed to under the current circumstances. I also think it was a terrible mistake for Jerry to quit in the middle of the season. I think it sent a terrible message. And when he interviews for future jobs, he's going to be answering questions about it.
So he did walk away. That was completely his decision to say, I'm so frustrated, I'm out.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to get a good reference after that. Buster Olney thanks the Buffalo Wild Wings with Armin and Levac. And Buster, you referenced the Yankees, and so did Jimmy Leyritz when we had him on this week. And he said that this should remind us of the solid relationship that Brian Cashman has with those within the Yankees front office. Would you agree with that?
Well, he's disagreed a lot. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a really strong working relationship. You can disagree, but, let's face it, there have been a number of situations in the past, as there were with the Angels, where, Artie Moreno was the one who signed Josh Hamilton, and Artie Moreno was assigned to Albert Pujols and C.J. Wilson. Brian wasn't, for example, on board with the signing of Gary Sheffield. He wasn't on board with the signing of Randy Johnson. But, he made his peace with how George and he did business together. I think he and Hal Steinbrenner, have disagreed. For example, I think the baseball operations department wouldn't have given Alex Rodriguez the 10-year deal that he did. I think the baseball ops department under Brian, they would have preferred to go in a different direction. But he has a very strong relationship, I think, with the Steinbrenner family, and I think they trust his motives. And they believe that Brian, day in, day out, does what he thinks is best for the Yankees organization and not just what's best for him.
Buster Olney thinks the Buffalo Wild Wings with Armin and Levac, 104.5 The Team.
Buster, we go through this almost every week. What do you make of this AL East right now?
Boy, I thought you were going to ask me who is better, the Yankees or the Mets. Thank goodness we bypassed that one.
I don't know if we have, actually, but go ahead.
I could, if we talk about the American League East every week, I'd probably give you a different answer every week. I would say this, among all the various elements of these teams, and, for the record, I picked the Orioles to win the division before the year started. I picked the Yankees to be the wild card team. I think the Blue Jays offense has a chance to be the most consistent force or most consistent unit in this division. I think all year they're going to hit. And in a division filled with teams looking for answers, that's a really good start. And I do think that you will see the Blue Jays add at least one pitcher before the trade deadline. If I consider today, I'm thinking that there's a better than 50-50 chance they'll wind up with Jonathan Papelbon. And if they get him or they have a starting pitcher, then that team suddenly looks very legitimate to me. Let's face it, it's a down year for the division. I just don't think the Yankees, I do think they're probably going to add somebody before the deadline, maybe a second baseman. but I don't think they're going to be much different going forward. And I think the Orioles are who they are. They're really limited in their everyday lineup. And the Rays, because of their financial limitations, they're always going to struggle for runs. So I think the Blue Jays have a chance maybe to ascend the most in the second half of the year.
Should be a fun second half of the season. Buster Olney, thanks to Armin and thanks to Buffalo Wild Wings with Armin and Levac on 104.5 The Team. And Buster, enjoy the 4th of July weekend with your family, my friend.
I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, we got the Giants and Nationals on Friday and Sunday. That'll be a ton of fun.
Awesome.